I'm Joanne Law, Director of Studies for Mediation Institute and co-founder of Interact Support. I'm on a mission to prevent violence by training and supporting dispute resolution practitioners. Mediation Musings is a series of conversations with mediators and for mediators. So if you're interested in dispute resolution, follow the channel. Enjoy. Welcome, Yvonne, and today I've got Yvonne Flanders with me. Yvonne's a family dispute resolution practitioner, a counsellor, and many other things. There's quite a few things I'd like to talk to you about, Yvonne, so welcome.
Thank you, Jo. It's lovely to be here.
That's great. And so you're kind of straddling two modalities that are aligned but certainly not the same between mediation and counselling. So I guess that's maybe we could start there. If you could give me a little bit of an insight of what you see as perhaps the similarities and differences between those two types of work that you're doing.
I am a family dispute resolution practitioner, so I work with families who are separating and divorcing. So the similarity is with the counselling is that I'm working with people who are having difficult times. So that's the overlying sameness. I'm also a nationally accredited mediator, so I do some workplace mediation, and they all sit in separate fields. On the other side, sort of in the counselling practice, I do work with people who are struggling in relationship, looking at separating, whole range of issues. I also work with individuals with things like depression and self-esteem, and a couple of sort of special interests, of course, around the family area. What I am very mindful of, and as family dispute practitioners, we are there to help people with mediation through their separation and divorce. So we, and you're the same, we help them prepare their parenting plan, looking at the relationship is over now, what's in the best interest and what are the needs of the children moving forward. However, we sit in that space as an impartial mediator. We're there to facilitate the conversation with loads of education and information without giving information, but we can share documents. There's a whole range, as you know, of wonderful documents and resources available on the internet, and the Attorney General's Department that we all work and are registered with is a great starting place. So by sharing this information and helping the clients be informed, they can work through this in a better way, having an understanding and always with the children's best interests at heart. Yeah. Then we step over sort of into the counselling in a situation where I would become very personally engaged with the people, asking them very personal questions. Well, you don't do any of that in the family dispute resolution area. In the mediation area, we have certain things we need to know. We need to know about the individuals. We need to know about how they're faring. Of course, we need to know, is there any family violence? Are there any orders in place? These are all very much information rather than personal. Tell me what's going on for you feeling. But of course, we do check in with how the client is going. And we all would refer, would you like someone to talk to about that? Have you got someone to talk to is the first place to start. But also offer them, a range of referrals that by, visiting these people, they might be able to help them with some of the emotional feelings they're experiencing, which also will help them address the family matters, the parenting, and we also do property mediation, being in the factual, moving ahead, let's deal with the issues rather than get caught up in the emotion. Oh, that's a long-winded response, wasn't it?
No, that's good. It's quite clear, and that distinction of yes, making some inquiry, but we're not digging down deeply in the mediation into people, how people are feeling, and we're not necessarily seeking to change their feeling other than by the process of helping them to resolve some of those problems that it will alleviate some aspects, but certainly when they're really stuck in difficult emotions for them, that's where they really need to go to the counselling. So from those two dual hats, because most of our listeners are in the dispute resolution industry, but also quite a number traditionally from our training, about a third have been from the counselling psychology type modalities. So long-winded question, what are your thoughts about conflict of interest between the two roles that you do?
That's a really good question. I personally don't feel there is any conflict of interest. You know, I run my counselling practice as a counselling practice, and I run my family dispute resolution practice as a practice. They're totally separate. I don't merge the two. I wouldn't take my counselling clients to mediation. Yeah. I happen to know a lot of really good mediators that I'd refer on to, Joanne. And equally, I wouldn't counsel my mediation clients. Yeah. And again, I have a lot of wonderful colleagues that I would refer on to. So I'm very clear in that I'm one thing or I'm the other, and I can sit in that space. And, you know, I have, I guess, the benefit of having had wonderful training and also being well experienced. I've covered a broad range of modalities within the counselling practice, work with a very big range of people and have a lot of understanding in that, can sit in that space and not, you know, practice the empathy and not the sympathy.
Yes.
Be with them, hear what they've got to say, and be that rock, be that go-to person for them so that they know they're being heard, they're being seen and being understood. And then going back into the FDRP space as a practitioner, I don't use any of these counselling skills. That's not what we're there for. And I'm very clear about not fudging those lines.
Yeah.
And I do check myself as I go along. You know, the wonderful thing about, you know, active listening, you know, like, hang on, what am I hearing? Is that something I need to go and no, that's, you know, nothing to do with the mediation at this point as much as, you know, I could see where there might have been issues around that, but not for the mediation.
Yeah, well, and that's the challenge, isn't it? Not to get caught up in the story and you know, want to delve down into areas that, you know, really is it relevant? Is it part of our role? Which can be a temptation as a mediator to do.
Can be a temptation as a counsellor too.
Okay.
And then you have to check yourself and say, am I being a bit of a voyeur here? Am I doing some good work? So I'm really mindful of that. I've had some quite stringent and disciplined training in these matters, so I can catch myself doing that.
Yeah, and look, particularly with counselling, I think projection of your own values and beliefs, and but you know, the same, it can happen in mediation as well, is really a occupational hazard for us when, you know, people are seeking guidance, I guess. What are your thoughts about that, of you know, risking? How do you avoid that of trying, you know, helping people too closely through your own view of the world?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and it has been years of learning. You know, I work in a way. All of my processes at the end of a session, whether it's a mediation, workplace, family dispute, property, parenting, even my counselling, I take just a moment at the end of it. What went well and what could I do better?
Yeah.
And that sounds like, oh yeah, sure, Yvonne, but you know, I actually do. And it only takes seconds, because when you take that moment, just say a minute, you know, we hear people, oh, we're so busy, we can't. But you know how long a minute is if you were just to reflect for a minute on what happened, and actually write it up and with the line down the middle. So anyone who's done any training with me knows I'm picking the line down the middle. Let's deal with the facts and the emotions, or what I did well or what we do better, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's that self-reflection. The other thing, of course, is I'm very fortunate, both through the Mediation Institute, to have peer supervision and supervision, you know, with yourself and some of your colleagues.
Yeah.
And also I'm bound by my counselling registration to have supervision, and I have a superb supervisor and a group of cohorts, you know, through my group supervision. So there's always plenty of feedback, and I think I heard someone speak on one of your Mediator Musings on how powerful that feedback is. You know, everywhere you can, put yourself up for, you know, feedback, because that's just what it is. They're just feeding that this is what they heard. So I don't necessarily need to have it go and have a breakdown, but there might be some valuable observations, or it might be a personal opinion, you know, and then that's something for you to work with. But as long as people are feeding back to you, there's this enormous opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely.
I'm really committed to that.
Yeah. No, that's very and just and you are one of our mentors with with Mediation Institute, but also with Interact Support. So you co-mediate with interns, which I personally find is such a huge opportunity for growth for myself, because you know the interns are constantly, oh, why did you do that? What, you know, could you have done this? And it's once again another huge opportunity for reflection. Is that how it feels for you?
Oh, exactly. You know, it's such a privilege working with these people, and you know, you have had some amazing people come through that organisation, including me. But you've had some wonderful people, and as you say, there's wonderful opportunity to learn either from what they bring, and that they're just terrific, or as you say, from the questions they ask that sort of set you back. It's like, yeah, why am I doing this? Gosh, it's nice to be checked, and it's not always easy.
No.
But it is just that enormous opportunity to be open and learn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I actually wanted to loop back about something you mentioned, the difference between empathy and sympathy. It's such an important thing that I really wanted to get a bit more of your take on that, of you know, what you see as the distinctions between those two processes or states, or whatever we want to call them.
Isn't that interesting? That's such a current conversation, you know, sympathy, empathy, you know, help me with this, you know. So, and so I keep up with this conversation, because whereas, you know, a recent one, you know, can empathy be learned? I'm thinking possibly, and it depends on the person and the circumstances, you know. I don't think we could generally say, yes, go out and learn empathy. I don't think it's that easy, and I think some people will never learn. But I think some people, I have learned to be empathetic. You know, I think that probably I have quite a good and soft heart, you know, and there were years ago that every time something was said, and I mean, I'm still a crier. But, you know, I just, oh my God, you know, blah, blah, and off I go. So the wonderful thing is to be with that person, to hear their pain. And I heard recently, sympathy is like you come across a friend down a well and you jump in to help them out. Empathy is, as you pass, you may have heard this, have you? As you pass the well, you assess how much rope am I going to need to help that person out.
Yeah.
And I think that says it quite nicely. So you don't have to be in there with them. And what I believe is it's so powerful to be that strong place, to hold the space for someone to be in pain without you being exactly in there, you know, oh, and then you both having a big cry together, or however that is. In saying that, you know, I have been known to tear up. You know, I went to a marvellous conference. I'm a member of the Association for Contextual and Behavioural Science, which really means it's a mindfulness act-based therapy conference. And one of the wonderful leaders in that practice spoke of how he has been known to sit and have tears with a client. And for me, that was so liberating, because I'm often holding back the
Yeah.
joking, and it's not that it's sympathy, it's just like, this is really sad,
Yeah.
And for me, that was so liberating. So you can be with someone and be strong for them. And if there's a tear rolls down your face, you're still holding strong for them, and they get that you're there for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm somewhat prone to that myself as well. So when there's really strong emotions, they are really contagious. And my strategy is to acknowledge. So rather than so I don't know what's your strategy if you do noticeably tear up or something with clients. Do you ignore it or mention it?
I'm sorry?
Do you ignore it or mention it, or depends on the context?
No, I leave it be. Mostly I leave it be, because mostly they're talking. So I try not to interrupt that. I let them talk, and mostly, I mean, I don't cry per se. I am holding it together, but even so, they can see that I'm tearing up, but I just let it be. They know that, I'm getting them. And generally when they're at that space, they're very much in their own space. They will notice, but keep going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the things that's been on my mind lately is boundaries in roles, and we've talked about that a little bit already. One of the areas that a lot of people are moving into is coaching. So counselling, perhaps if they're qualified, mediation, but sometimes they're doing divorce coaching or other things that are less regulated than the other areas. Have you had any exposure or thoughts about that? I guess how we need to be working with people within our roles.
Yeah, yes, actually a lot. And it's interesting to use the term coaching, because if you look at some of my marketing, I call myself a counsellor and a coach, personal coach. So I do some coaching, which is, again, quite different to counselling. So the counselling is, you're listening, you're asking questions. What I know when people come to counselling is most people have their own answers, but sometimes they just can't find them. And as they talk it through, you can see sometimes that they talk themselves to the realization. Now, it may not happen in the first hour. It might take a little while, but it's amazing how by careful questioning, people come to their solution. So they don't come to me for a solution, but they hopefully find their way. So in the coaching, the coaching is a little more directed. So holding people to account. And there's been, even outside of the divorce coaching, there's been a lot of people calling themselves coaches. And I wonder a lot about that. I wonder about anything that is not regulated, so to speak. And funnily enough, counselling is not absolutely regulated. I am registered with the Australian Counselling Association. I have all the documentation, the insurance. I am registered as a counsellor. And anyone can hang out a shingle and be a counsellor or a coach. I think people have to be really mindful, as you say, of their boundaries. So if they're going to call themselves a coach, I think they need to be really clear about how far they go. You might have a process or a strategy to put to people, have you thought about trying, but to be directive and to coach per se, I have some concerns and reservations around how that's being done.
Look, so do I, and it's I think it's going to become a larger problem, and something I really encourage anyone who is doing that work to have an agreement, the same way we have an agreement to mediate. Work within an agreement with clients so that the boundaries of what you're doing is really clear, because that sympathy trap is a lot easier if you're in something that's less defined. It's very easy to slip, be leaning over the edge of that well and fall in.
I mean, what we see, Joanne, is so many people think, oh, I've been there, I've done that, I know the answers now. I didn't get it right in my own divorce.
Yes.
But what I learned from that is enormous, and I can share that with people now. And I think, carefully.
Yeah, and that's definitely a problem where people have got the context of a study of one, and very intense study and probably a long-term study of their own divorce, but it doesn't necessarily equate to knowing what the other people need to do. So that doesn't mean to say that people that their divorce may not have triggered them to really become interested in and wanting to work in this field and from that get the training and what have you they need. But yeah,
indeed, I've got a friend who's currently becoming a family lawyer. Who's studying law because of her divorce. So don't we do that? And I mean, certainly the lived experience does put you in good stead, but remember, that's only, as you say, research study of one.
And whatever versions the friends have told you. So as mediators, we know that there's always versions of reality that exist in any situation, because we have the privilege of talking to to both sides in cases.
In fact, I heard, and I wish I knew where I'd heard this one, was when you talk about relationships, the startings are all the same, it's only the endings that are different. And I think we need to be mindful of that, and I think there is a real tendency. I've worked with some practitioners, and you can see them think, oh yeah, I've heard this before. Well, I mean, what happens to you, Joanne? How do you keep yourself fresh, in this? Because there is a tendency, oh yeah, here we go. In the back of your mind, oh, I know where this is going to go. I haven't like this before. This is. How do you deal with that?
I'm really conscious of it and really actively work not to do that, not to generalize, not to assume that this is going to be like any other case, because if we do, then we've started to stereotype clients, we've started to generalize, and we're always going to be, if we generalize, our brains are going to say, oh yes, and they start deleting information so that it doesn't actually get to our awareness. So I've as you know, I've done studies in NLP, and been really interested in how our brains work and how they trick us. So so it's a danger that I'm really, really conscious of, and deliberately try very, very hard not to let myself think in that way.
Yeah, so I think for me, if I may say, when this occurs, I really bring myself right back into the present to Joanne. So what's going on for Joanne? So what question can I put here? Whether it's reality checking in FDR or, in counselling, a little bit different, because you think, oh, here we go, here's what question can I ask? So it's all about good questions. You get good questions, you get better answers, but staying present, not making them colour B, or blue bees. What can I do to make this into something completely new and different, and see Joanne for who she is in this space?
Yeah, and I think, as you said, being present, because if you're present, then you're responding and you're connecting with the person that you're with, rather than in your head, and then you're disconnected, and that's where when we're in our head, we really run that risk of running off the rails. And something that sometimes practitioners forget is how much power we have in that room, and we think, oh, well, I'm a mediator, I'm neutral, I'm not affecting anything. No. We have enormous power in that room as a professional that's facilitating a process. Do you agree, or do you disagree?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you've touched on something that I'm also very mindful of just at the moment, is that, as you say, how much power we have in that room. I mean, how intense is the energy in a room when you're doing a mediation? So often there's the mediator or, co-mediator and two parties. And, it's like the energy is so intense. And what really comes up for me in this space is how loud the unspoken word is,
Yeah.
and how everything is magnified, exemplified, because what comes into it for me is authenticity as well. So, the clients know that very split moment when you're thinking about dinner,
Yeah.
and I mean, I've learnt this from my observations of, and sort of feedback I had a long time ago about something that was about being present, and someone pulled me up and I thought, you're right, it wasn't in this business, it was a long time ago, but it was very valuable learning. But how quickly inauthenticity and that unspoken word comes up. And as mediators, and even as counsellors, this is really interesting, then being able to ask the tough questions, the ones that are relevant and necessary to be asked. Sometimes I've noticed colleagues shy away from those, which is sort of about them rather than the clients, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's something I notice, particularly because I'm lucky enough to train a lot of people. You see them thinking, that the question they should ask is in their head. You can see it, but they don't ask it because, what if they start getting caught up in the what if thinking in their head and not being present, having a little conversation with themselves instead of the client. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Exactly. And and so then I go on to, but what if I don't?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sort of like, then it's like you have no choice. This is my work. I'm operating in my role here. It's not stepping into that personal, that voyeurism in counselling. It's like, what if I don't ask this question? Am I being true to my work and my cause?
Yeah, and for me, a lot of that comes down to intention. What's my intention there in the room? So, if I ask something and it falls badly, if my intention was, I'm here to help you to sort through this, to try and negotiate something that will work for both of you and for your children. It doesn't matter if there's a clanger every now and again, and it's just like you can move beyond it.
Oh, that's lovely, Joanne. Yeah, that's lovely. Setting the intention. Each time you go into a mediation, each time you go into what's my intention. I also talk a lot about purpose, intention for some people. And purpose, and it's a great thing to I think sort of say at the beginning, particularly in mediation, that our purpose, our intention today is, because when it starts getting bumpy and people are losing, let's just reflect on the reason we're here today. When we met today, we agreed that our intention was to. Lovely place to go back to, and such a gorgeous choice of words.
Yeah, and look, often mediators, with the opening statements, because we do it so many times, it starts to feel like, oh, it's just formula, it doesn't matter. It's so important to set the scene for everyone and really, really be very clear about why we're there and getting everyone on the same page and getting permission to do what we need to do. I guess we work with voluntary processes, or in these processes, sometimes it's not as voluntary as it might or perhaps should be, but in general, people can leave. They can leave counselling if it's not working for them.
Yeah.
And so making sure everyone's on the same page of what's important. So I know that you trained with Lifeline very early in your career, and everyone that's trained with them, they've really talked about how valuable that learning and I suppose being at that point of real angst for people, existential angst. Have you got any reflections on that? Or?
Well, yes, and what you say is true. I mean, Lifeline is the most wonderful organisation, and of course, we hear about it all the time. But behind the scenes in Lifeline is just amazing. Their training is probably the best training I have done out of everything I've done. They are so diligent and so what's the word, precise,
Yeah.
you know, and it was an absolute privilege to be with them, you know, to learn from them and to learn their ways. And then I volunteered with them when I was living in Melbourne for quite a number of years. And it was just amazing, you know. The Buddha says, what you give out, you get back 3 times. And every time I did a shift at Lifeline, it was like another gift. Sounds funny, but it's the way they do teach you, and also there's supervision, and they support you through your training. They do it lots of role plays. You just keep role playing and role playing until you get it. And the way they do it's brilliant, because you have the 2 parties and the observer. And so as the observer, you know, you learn so much. And while you're in there, you learn so much, you know. It's just wonderful. And then, of course, you always have the opportunity to debrief again, that opportunity to get the feedback and to learn and to grow. And as with so many things, as long as you're still loving it and you're still fresh, you go back, and each time there's another opportunity to just, you know, add on and to further develop your skills and your listening and your presence, as long as you stay fresh, as you don't become another one that's like the ho-hum, here we go again. So,
Yeah.
you know, and as individuals, we need to be very honest with ourselves as to why we're doing this work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I look after our own mental health in this work, because it can be challenging. And I really, I thought it was a great tip, and I hope everyone paid attention to you when you said at the end of the session that you, you know, just reflect on what went well and what didn't go, or, you know, what you might have done differently. Because from my point of view, I think that's a way of actually unloading that, so it's not niggling away in the back of your mind the rest of the night or whatever.
Exactly. And as soon as you get it out of your head, you've said it beautifully. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's really important. But if, you know, if something in counselling or any, you know, if you're exposed to something that doesn't do the trick, making sure that you do talk with someone, that you get, whether it's supervision, or whatever works for you. But you know, we want to make sure that people are in this industry for a long time, and that requires looking after yourself as well as your clients.
Exactly.
But talking about the people that, just to shift a little bit, people that are coming into the industry. So have you got any tips or thoughts for people that are starting out in, well, probably we'll have counsellors listening to this as well, so in either industry, I guess.
Oh,
sorry.
Well, I think no, that's all right. There, I mean, a couple of things really come up for me. The work is wonderful. I mean, it is, again, such a privilege to sit with people in this space. However, you need to have the tenacity and the resilience to do it. To sit and to hear what's going on for people. And so you're always checking yourself. You commented, you're always checking yourself as you're going along. So you're using that time, what did I hear? You know, you reframe, you reflect, make sure, checking in with the client, you use the silence, you know, check on how you're doing. I think for both of the things, and you know, I, you know, have had my counselling practice for a number of years, and the family dispute resolution for lesser years. I think it's wonderful work, and think about what the work is going to bring you in the future. So to go into this out of fairness, and I'm being absolutely honest here to say, oh yeah, that sounds great, and it is great, but it is hard work. If you're going to set up a practice, be prepared, you know, and any business, they say it takes 2 years to set up a business. And, you know, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It doesn't fall in your lap. You know, have that business plan. And then it's not easy. You know, I hear people, and we all hear people say, oh, I'm not very motivated today. You know, it's about, you do the work and maybe the motivation will come. So, you know, be very serious and very honest with yourself about what you're going to do for that 2 years. You're going to keep your day job and build up a business on the side, and that goes on both of those businesses. And I think that's for all businesses, isn't it, Joanne?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's very difficult just to start up a brand new business from nowhere. You know, lawyers, they'll generally build up a bit of a clientele with where they're working, and they do the jump or whatever into their own practice. But it's you know, once again, it takes time to build up and it is very much a referral network, a referral business, mediation, and to a degree counselling as well. Like, you need people that know and trust your work to be able to send clients to you, because yes, you will get some just ringing up from a search on the internet, and that requires you to have websites and SEO and all sorts of wonderful things like that as well if you want to be found.
Yeah.
But so you just, I guess what I'm hearing from you is that, you know, be prepared to put the work in to build your business the same way you would any other business, I guess.
Yes, and you know, we've seen a lot of people come through the training of the Mediation Institute, and I think at the end of it, some of them are a bit, you know, surprised. Is that your experience, Joanne? That's what I see. That well, you know, I haven't had many clients. I think you just have to keep doing it. It's like making a building, put the foundation, or toiling the earth to grow some vegetables. You know, you just have to keep at it, and keep watering and nurturing. That's my experience. I hear this, and I think it's a great thing to go in eyes open with a business plan of, I'll do my study, and generally in the universe, I understand it takes about 2 years to really establish yourself in a business. However, that's not sitting back watching the calendar, counting the days till, oh yes, this is day 700 and whatever. It's like doing the work along the way.
Yeah, well, it's you know, it's difference between hunting and gardening. You know, it really is a gardening business. You need to nurture it, you need to fertilize it, you need to look after it, because you don't, it's not a business where you just go out and hunt down clients, because most people but you know, in mediation, don't know that that's what they're looking for. They don't know that that's going to help them, because they can't talk to the other person, so they don't expect that mediation would work. That's I find the biggest problem for mediation. So it's making sure that people that they're working with understand the type of clients that you might be able to help with, and send them for you to have a conversation with to see. And with counselling, you know, there as you said earlier, you know, there is a fair range of people that say they're counsellors, from people that have got very little training or whatever, to people that are, you know, supremely qualified and really able to work effectively with the right, you know, with the right clients for them. And I guess that's a challenge for counselling as well, because sometimes people will go to, they've tried counselling, so they've you know, they've had
and it didn't work.
It didn't work.
Yeah, and you know, that just, if I may say, that also brings up something that's really important in both roles, Joanne, is when you look for a family dispute resolution practitioner, most of them, when you go on the internet, will have a conversation with you. And it's really important you work with someone you like. And it's the same with the counselling. You know, one would like to think that everyone's going to love me, but, you know, it just doesn't work out that way, it seems. Keep talking to someone till you think, you know, I like the way this person, and have, you know, be prepared if you're a client, you know, have some questions, but most practices offer this initial consultation. Know what you're, or know what you're not looking for. Often they don't know what they don't know. But make sure it's someone that just in that conversation you're happy and comfortable and feel like you're being heard in both of those things.
And look, that loops around to something I was wanting to mention before in our conversation, be it off, which was rapport, which I find is kind of the essential prerequisite ingredient for empathy. Unless we can establish rapport, it's very difficult to tune into what's going on for people. And as professionals, we're skilled at creating rapport, but it's certainly easier with some people than others.
Yeah.
And so
So
yeah.
how do you deal with someone who you're finding you're having a little bit of difficulty connecting with?
Yeah,
Have
well,
you got some-
I think we need to think, is this, am I the right person for them as well? Because it goes both ways. The clients need to make a decision about whether, as a professional, we're the right person for them. But, as a professional, we also need to be thinking about, is this the right client for me?
Well said. Yeah, and I think people shy from that because we all want the work. That's why we do this. We do this as much as we love doing the work.
Yeah.
Most of us are doing it for the pay as well.
Yeah.
And to be really, in integrity and sort of say, in here, I don't think I can do this. Because, in my life, when things haven't felt right, often they don't work out right. How's it for you?
Absolutely. Hindsight's wonderful, isn't it? And in those situations, we usually can look back and think, oh, it didn't feel right, but I did it anyway. And so I think that's a really important thing to be aware that we're doing ourselves a disservice and probably the client if we really try to force something that's not right for us.
Yeah, indeed, exactly.
Which is quite I guess it comes, that brings us around to looking at what our niche is. And it's scary, particularly if you're new to business, to say, don't take on every type of work, don't take on every type of client. Work out what you're really good at, who you really resonate with, and focus there. Don't discount everyone else necessarily, but be really aware of who are the sorts of people that you're really wanting to help. So I'm mad enough that I'm really interested in working with the higher conflict people.
You just love a challenge.
No, I guess I know what's going to happen to their family if they don't change their path. And so I'm kind of wanting to stand at the crossroads, sort of say, well, here are your options, guys. And I talked before about generalizing, and I've gone and done it. But but for others it may not be. It may be that those aren't the sorts of clients that they take on. They might have trauma or something that could be triggered if and in that case you can still do amazing work in a different area of focus. But so look, I'm just mindful of time because I could go on chatting with you forever.
Just before we move on, I'd really like to acknowledge you, Joanne, and the work that you do in this high conflict area and around family violence. So, good on you. I know you put in a lot of your own time because this is truly your belief and your passion. And good on you.
It definitely is something that I'm very passionate about. I want to help those families and particularly those children that to be able to grow up to their full potential, because that's the problem. Apart from the physical dangers and all of those things which are very real and very significant, it's that stunting of potential that I find is such a terribly sad thing, and something I like to help prevent by making homes safe. But that's about me. So what about you? What are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share or leave people with? Is there anything you've got coming up you want to let people know about? Anything?
Oh, I don't, other than Christmas holidays. No, most people. Joanne, both of the things, we do, the family dispute resolution and also the counselling, I really encourage people to seek mediation first. if at all possible, as people are starting to research, I think I'm going to live with my husband, I think I'm going to separate from my wife, the sooner they talk to someone.
Yeah.
And I suggest a mediator. I think coming on the softly, and of course we always advise them to get legal advice. Know where you stand in the shadow of the law. However, working with a mediator, what we do, and we pride ourselves and work so hard towards, is keeping those communication channels open. What's life going to look like when we get through this? And as you say, minimizing the damage and the trauma along the way. And really, the children are often, the ones who really suffer through this process. So, both of us, our real passion is this work, but of course, looking after children, as you so beautifully said. Same with counselling. A lot of people think, I don't need that stuff. But it's amazing. And I think we all tend to do it without knowing that, when things are a bit tough, we bring up our best friend, our mothers, whoever, and, like that's a form of counselling as well.
Yeah.
So have someone, go to someone, talk. There's no judgment. You can say it how it is. And it's just amazing for me to see how people, as the words come out of their mouths, it lightens their load, both in the head and the heart, and how often they just find their own answers. It's just getting it out of that headspace is so powerful.
Absolutely. And I forgot to mention that you are a child inclusive practitioner, and that's another area where there's just so much potential and unrealised potential. Just for anyone that's not really up to speed on what that work is that you do with children, would you maybe just quickly share on that?
Yes, of course. Well, it comes back to our passion about looking after the children through this whole process. So the child inclusive mediation and counselling is when the voice of the child comes into the mediation. And what it takes initially, it's a lovely process, because when the parents hear the child's take on what's going on, often it's a surprise, because as the parents are going through this, often they think, the children, they look outward and the children seem to be functioning. And often they either don't think to or struggling themselves. They don't check in with the children. So, how are you going? And it's a hard thing for a parent to do. A lot of parents do it well, and some parents just forget, or whatever their reasons are. So this process is when both parents agree for the children to come to this mediation counselling session, which is a session, I won't go through the whole process, where I talk with the children. So it's done in a very relaxed play type setting, just a conversation, a confidential conversation, an opportunity for the children to talk about what's going on for them, and an opportunity for them to let the parents know. And sometimes the children are fine. You always check in, is that something you wanted me to let the parents know? Or often they'll say no, because there's a sort of like, well, if I tell them this, they'll get upset. But otherwise, we have this focus around what the children are saying. And even if the children don't agree for the conversation, to go back to the parents as feedback. And when I say that, there's another caveat there. The parents have to be capable of hearing the feedback too. So we have to check in and work very closely with the mediator. By the way, if I'm a child inclusive mediator, I'm not mediating with the family. I don't cross those lines. So if the children are not entirely comfortable, giving feedback to the parents, in a generalist way, we can still feedback to the parents that what we know of children of this age often experience these things. So in a generalist way, they're hearing things, I wonder if Susie's feeling that. So it's a beautiful process, and I'm thinking that as mediation gains momentum and more and more people come to mediation and are spruiking the success they're having through this, people will start to bring the children's voice into it, and then be really in a position to make their decisions around what is in the best interest of the children.
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly my hope as well. And we know children will they're dependent on their parents. They often have to modify what they say based on you know, their need to try and be safe and protected, and often it's because they love their parents very much and they don't want to upset them.
Yeah.
And that I find a really difficult situation where both parents are very honestly saying what their children have told them. It's just the children are telling each parent different things.
You know, and it might be a conversation for another day, Joanne,
Yeah,
because it's
definitely.
so interesting. But it's surprising how responsible these children become and how young they are.
Yeah.
You know, where do they know this stuff from? And I've seen it even in my own life with a friend of mine, a little 4-year-old daughter looking after mum.
Yeah.
How does this all work? Anyway, it's a
Yeah,
much
it's definitely a conversation for another day. But yeah, look, thank you so much, Yvonne. It's been really, really delightful chatting, and hopefully those listening will find some insights from our chat as well. So thank you again.
Thank you. We certainly covered a lot of ground, so I hope it's informative rather than confusing. And thank you always for your time, Joanne.
Thank you.